So the banjo is not an easy instrument to play for guitarists because there's entirely different feel. So
Totally. And different fingerings, different chords. I mean, the chords aren't played the same.
I can't. I'm a musician, but I still cannot hear the word fingering without
Fingerings.
being total pervert.
It's fingerings. Yes.
I can't hear the word. Fingering does not.
So I was fingering my banjo. And,
hey, so shout out to Barrett, who's able to play guitar and banjo. It does not translate. So good job, Barrett. There's also in philosophy, anytime I hear the thrust of the argument, I snicker. I can't.
You got to grow up, man. Come on. You got to get over this stuff.
I'll never grow up. I'm 41 years old, and I refuse to grow up, my friend. Anyway, this is the bonus show. This is what are we doing here? We're coming off the episode about women, and now two men are here to comment on it.
I'm going to mansplain the episode to everybody. Okay, so here's what.
So basically, here's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. Here's what April Joy meant when she said, "Yeah." Here's what Sheila Wray meant to say. This will be the mansplaining bonus episode. Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, before we do that, let's just. Thanks, folks.
What are we doing? Thanks. Bye, everybody.
I don't want to get in trouble. Oh God. No, we're not going to do that. That's funny though. You see what this is? Okay. We're not snowflakes. We can joke. We can make jokes. We're progressives, right? And we make jokes about that.
We can laugh at ourselves, of course. Yes.
Of course. Come on. Yeah. Anyway, this is the bonus show. 530-332-8020 is the number if you want to call into this show. 530-332-8020. When you do, just make sure you reference whatever show you are asking a question about. If we didn't get to it on the main show on Tuesday, we can get to it here. So we are, of course, still recording this before we've even launched this podcast. We're time travelers, Keith and I.
Yes, we are.
So we don't have any calls today, but in the future those calls are going to roll in, and we will take those. But as of today, do you want to mention the sponsor before we get into the meat of the episode here?
Sure. I just have to remember, since we're recording this in advance, at some point we need to stop early because
I know
the event will have already happened.
This is June. We're fine.
Okay, so we have a sponsor. It's the Wild Goose Festival. If you go to wildgoosefestival.org, you'll see their website. You'll see it's an amazing, I think 5-day festival, and they have great speakers, they have music, they have art. Fantastic! It's just such a great place. It's a wonderful experience. I was at the Goose a couple years ago, and our sponsor is the Wild Goose Festival, and so go to wildgoosefestival.org. If you use the promo code A-HELL, you will get $50 off a adult weekend pass. So head over there, go to the website, use the code, register, get your $50, and who knows? Like we said, we keep saying this. We might be there, or we might not, but that'll be a little surprise.
But probably not. No,
probably not.
Probably not. I'd love to be there. Money's a bitch. So yeah, thank you, Wild Goose. I am manifesting the fact that I'll eventually be there.
One day they will beg us to come. They'll be like, "Oh, please come and speak on the main stage. Come on."
No, I just feel like in a year from now we'll be able to afford it. I got Ken Copeland, Kenny C, I call him. He's got like a G6, 7. You know, I'm trying to avoid the demons, so if I can get on a private jet, get out there, I'll be there next year. You know, so I'm manifesting a choir jet, G7, pimped out.
If I had a private jet, I would sell it for the money because I don't really want a private jet because it costs too much to take care of that thing.
I wouldn't do private jet. No,
it's too much.
I do want a boat. Not for like pretentious reasons, but I've always wanted to sail.
See, I don't. My dad had a boat, had a bass boat when I was younger. And
this is where I break my Hobbit tradition. I'm cool with the water. I'm not cool in the water. I don't want to get in the water, but I'm on the water. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't mind going to lakes. Like I've water skied and swim in the lakes, and that's fun. I don't mind that. But it's I'm not a fan of boats. I'm not a fan of fishing, and I really honestly have a healthy fear of the ocean.
That's good. We should have a healthy fear of the ocean. It's fucking enormous.
And it
can kill you. Do you remember the fucking, what are you, submergible? Remember that story for 2 weeks? Jesus Christ.
That's horrible. Yeah. Hey,
I was thinking about that way too much. I was like, I was like, motherfucking white people. They're like, I would never be in that situation. Like,
no, never. I would never put myself
doing that.
No.
What are you doing?
What, almost $1 million or $1 million each to go into that?
Not to disrespect the deceased, but
no,
there's some shit where I'm like,
I'm sure they regret it. Yeah.
God bless them.
If they were here to regret it. Yeah.
It's just terrifying. Anyway, we are here to mansplain the episode. No, what I wanted to actually do, as I've been seeing this going around the TikTok before it gets banned by some old ass, everyone. This is the one thing. Congress can't do shit, but they can agree to ban TikTok. You guys are so fucking out of touch with people. I digress. Anyway, I saw it on TikTok. It's this whole bear in the woods versus man in the woods. Asking a woman, would you rather be with a bear in the woods or a man in the woods? Or asking a man, would you rather your spouse or your daughter be in the woods with a bear or a man? And you don't get to that's all the details you get, right?
Okay.
And I'm watching all of these men realize that they can't decide, right? They have questions about it. If you ask, would you rather your daughter be in the woods with a woman or a bear, immediately they say woman.
Of course.
And I'm watching these going, oh, this is so funny because like, I'm not surprised by this. Of course, that's the minute I saw the question, I was like, okay, brilliant question. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
The funny part about it is when it comes to the question, the fact that they have questions, like they want follow-up clarification. What kind of bear is it? And I'm like, that's the minute they got, like, the point is already proven. Like, and I'm like, yeah, of course it matters. Like, is it a grizzly bear or is it a black bear?
Or is it a panda bear?
Or is it a panda? Like, yeah.
It's a panda bear.
The minute you ask that question proves the motherfucking point, because if you say a bear and a woman, you're like, yeah, I'm cool with my daughter being with a woman in the woods. I'd much rather have that. I'm sure they'll lead each other out. They'll probably develop a friendship.
Yeah, I can trust the woman with my kid. Yeah.
Exactly. I have no follow-up questions with that. A bear or a woman, I have no clarifying questions on what kind of bear.
Right.
If you have to ask what kind of bear about the man, like, already, right?
You've already said, I don't want it to be a man.
Exactly.
Depending on the kind of bear it is.
I heard one guy was like, is it a friendly bear? Is it a friendly man? He was like, oh, that's worse. I was like, yeah, if it's a friendly man, it's worse.
Is it a friendly man? Oh, wait. Yeah.
Ooh,
in that case,
the bear. The grizzly.
Yeah.
No, I just thought that was fascinating. I know we were talking about it in the chat. It never got brought up in the main. But I think men, for some reason, it's surprising and it's not surprising. Yes. It's like these two things could be true at once. I'm surprised that men are just now like realizing that the question itself is getting them to think, but at the same time, that's not surprising.
Right. No, it's great. I thought that was I'd never heard of this, but it is a great way to illustrate, I think, how unsafe women and children feel around
and are
not just how they feel. That's right. How they are around men. Yeah. It was a good episode. It was a good conversation. As always, it's like it's only an hour long, and there's always things we didn't get to go into.
Of course.
But and I guess the other thing I feel is that when we tackle, the last several episodes, like we've done, Christian nationalism and now we're doing the patriarchy and stuff like that, and it's good to talk about them, and I think there's always good points that are brought up, and that's why we have these experts on the panel, because they know more than we do on these things, and that's always very good. Like I love that Sheila had statistics and surveys and hard data. That was great. But at the end of the day, it just feels like on some of these issues, like I don't know what I expect, like we're going to solve the world's problems, but I wish that we could come away with, okay, everybody, here's how to improve this situation. Here's how to make this world a better place around this topic. And it's usually just like, yes, this is a huge problem. Yes, it's out of control. Yes, there's danger associated with it. and bye. See you next week. You know what I mean? Like, we can't solve problems,
No, but I love like my first question to Sheila was about like, how do we get men to listen? She was like, I'm not worried about men. I'm trying to talk to women who are like need help. And I was like, oh, good point.
Yeah.
Because we can't solve the problem. Like, it's like you can't solve the problem until people. Well, for one, I think like it's hard. There's again, two things could be true at the same time. Like, we need to do things that set up systems that don't allow the already toxic men to have power anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the greater question would be, how do we educate people so that those toxic men don't like grow up to be toxic men? Like, we don't educate them in that way anymore, or uneducate them in that way.
Right.
Like, so it's it's like, first and foremost, it's like, you got to stop the bleeding. We have to do things within the system to prevent the exploitation of women, of Black folks, of gay folks, of trans folks. And then societally, culturally, educationally, which is why they go after education, and ban books and shit.
Sure.
We have to educate people so that no longer do we create a system in which toxic men ever rise to power again.
No, that would be wonderful. Yes. If we could figure out a way to make sure that, like you said, that we raise young men who don't grow up to be toxic men, who aren't dangerous, who aren't operating in this sort of privilege and then the patriarchy, right? If that would be great if we could figure out a way to do that. You understand though that the existing sort of theobros and the existing patriarchy is going to fight that with everything they've got, right?
Of course,
they do,
and they've kind of monopolized talking to men. What do you think about when you think someone talking to men? You think of Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro.
Yeah,
we're going to talk to men, a men's conference. So the people who fill in that space, often the guys who are going to talk to men, we're going to have straight shooting with men. Those are the guys who are perpetuating the problem.
Like Mark Driscoll.
There is not. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the guys that get invited. Those are the guys that attract the most attention, right? Like if you, let's say you were going to do a men's event. So yes, who's on your dream list most likely? Jordan Peterson.
The first person that came to my mind, I'm gonna say Brandon Robertson.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean,
that would fuck them up. Be like, I'm gonna start a men's conference.
Yeah,
Brandon Robertson's gonna be the first person that came in my head, just off the cuff.
Yeah,
cuff, whatever it is. A gay man.
Yep.
Is gonna lead a men's conference. That's how I'd start.
Yes,
but they don't see it that way.
Yep. Yeah, I almost you give me ideas. Like, it would be great if choir could like do a real men's conference, and who would we invite? And we would specifically invite men to that men's conference.
All gay men. I do all gay men.
It doesn't have to be all gay men.
Men who are
going to speak out against the patriarchy and tell men, how to empower women and create safe spaces for women.
Doesn't have to be gay men. I know. I'd invite you, but let me ask you this. If I ask, let me reframe the question.
I'm a beta man, though. I'm a beta guy.
Would you rather have your daughter in the woods with a bear or a gay man?
Oh, there you go. What a great twist on that question.
1,000 out of 1,000. Clip this shit. Put this clip on TikTok.
Yeah, there you go.
1,000 out of 1,000 times, I will choose the gay man.
Right. Who is your daughter safer with, a bear or a gay man? Now, again, conservatives are going to say, they've got this perpetual stereotype.
They don't got gay. No.
Even though he's gay, but he's probably a pedophile. He's probably a pervert or something.
But they ain't right. They ain't right though.
Oh, of course they're
not.
Go
with your gut
because you don't know any gay men. If you knew a gay man,
if you're a woman, listen to this question: would you rather have your daughter with a bear or a gay man? You might say gay man, but you're not going to say man.
Right.
I bet you'd pick a gay man.
Yes. Maybe that's what it should be. They have three choices. Is your daughter safer with a man, a gay man, or a bear? The gay man, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yep.
I would choose the gay man.
Because the gay man is sensitive, he's kind, he's thoughtful.
My daughter and him would come out of the woods best friends.
That's right. They would, the gay man would respect your
daughter. They would do a TikTok dance together and some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
They'd exchange numbers, be like, yeah, we were just chilling. Why'd you come? How long were you in there? Like 3 days. We actually just kicking it.
Exactly.
We got a whole TikTok right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Hey. Oh, shit. I think I just came out to some. I think it's straight men. Sorry, Keith. No, but you feel me. Like, it's not. Damn. That's a good one.
Yeah. It's a good it's a good question.
Twist.
Yeah.
Twist in the tail.
Twist on that. Yeah. Yeah. So, like when we talked about how it's not really women's job to fix this patriarchal problem. It's because men have created the systems and men benefit from those systems and are the ones who protect those systems because they give them this privilege, right? That means they get hired more, they get paid more, they get promoted more. So yeah, why would they're incentivized not to resist a system like that? So
it's not women's job, but they're going to do it anyway.
Well, here's what I would say though too. It's not their job, but we need their help. I think men need to listen to women because I think women are the ones that are going to reflect back to us the reality that we don't see when it comes to. That's why we invited, those.
Oh,
those
if we
experts.
Want to grow, yeah. But I mean, as a system thing, they don't. They're gonna take it. Have you? I mean, they're gonna. We're seeing right now, like, I think the anti-abortion folks have underestimated the power of women and where people are at and the pulse of where they're at.
Yeah.
And they're going to see just how, like, I mean, just take all the ethics out of it, like just how politically stupid it is.
Yeah.
To just put your feet 10 toes in the ground on that issue.
Right.
So they're going to see the political power of women. But I mean, as far as like, yeah, we need them to grow. We need everyone who's not like us to grow because we're all going to have blind spots. It's the more I'd say this, and it's all on the spectrum. This isn't the, oppression Olympics, but the more minority, the less power you have, the more oppressed you are, the more. I don't even know where I was going with that. Cut that out. Edit that. Well, I had a punchline. I swear to God, I had a punchline, and it just escaped my brain.
Well, what I was going to say is, you're right about the fact that
man. That was going to be Old Man Matt.
Old Man Matt. We don't have that clip.
No, we don't.
So, but like to your point, right? I agree with you, right? So on the abortion issue, it has already backfired in Republican states, red states, where if it's been on the ballot, Republicans have lost on this issue of abortion. And
as they should.
And so, yeah, it's backfiring on them. However, in response, what they're doing is instead of saying, "Oh, I guess we're wrong on this issue. Let's change our mind on the issue." Well, now they're coming back and saying, and especially a lot of Christian nationalists are saying, is that, well, the solution to this problem is let's take away a woman's right to vote in the first place. So now, because that's our problem, it says these women are voting. So let's just go back and make it so that women can't vote, and it's one vote per household, and then the man gets to vote.
That's wild.
That's exactly what they're saying.
Fucking insane. I've heard that recently. I was like,
yeah. I'm trying to think of the guy who said this. What was his name? Let's see. What was his name?
These motherfuckers are going to cause like a literal revolution.
Yes.
Like if you just look at them, how shitty these motherfuckers are compared to like history.
Yeah.
They are so out of touch with people. They are so fucking out of touch with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I loved about the main show? Like I love that Sheila brought up that women are the one leading the charge on deconstruction. And it's almost like, and I don't even mean religious deconstruction. I mean like societal deconstruction, political like the whole nine.
No, we need it. I mean, don't you feel that? I feel this way that, man, it's a breath of fresh air. When we start moving into like having a female president and a female vice president and more women in Congress, in the Senate, and, more women, more female voices in leadership, in places of leadership, I think that's overall a really, really good thing. Now, we have a lot of women in leadership who are not the best voices, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene and which is Lauren Boebert and all those kind of like. There's plenty of women voices that are also still toxic and also still repeating. Remember,
well, where do they come from? Where do those voices come from? They come from patriarchal.
Yes, it's just like when Lisa Sharon Harper was saying. We made the comment about white Christian nationalism. And it's like, yes, it's largely white Christian nationalism, but there's still plenty of people of color who are repeating the white Christian nationalist message. And this is the same kind of thing. So we have women that are protecting and defending the patriarchy, again, against their own interest. But they're there.
I literally this morning was having a conversation with my daughter about that. And she's going to be 14 soon. So we have some pretty mature conversations. And it's like, there's always been that throughout society. Yep. There's always been the people who that's how insidious the power systems are, right?
That's right.
It convinces the people it oppresses that they're the good one. It's like, you got the phrase like a house N-word, right? You have this phrase Uncle Tom. You have Stockholm syndrome-ish stuff with like, I was like, well, like Belle falling in love with the beast.
Yeah.
Right. You have women who support, anti-abortion, which is i.e. anti their own health care. Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
The problem is like, we can't focus on the people. Like what conservatives like to do is they focus on those people. They laser focus on the Candace Owens and the Herschel Walkers.
Right. They don't just focus on them. They celebrate them. They give them a platform.
Brits.
They give them lots of money.
Right.
They invite them to be guests on big shows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Because they fit that narrative that they want.
That's right.
But that doesn't reflect the overall view of those folks. Whoever those folks are, gay folks, black folks, trans folks, women, like they just like to single them out because it goes against the traditional thing, like the norm within that community,
right?
And they just cherry pick it.
That's right.
And that's how insidious it is. That's how insidious those systems are. Is they target the folks that they oppress, they bring them onto their team, and then they become the voice of those people,
right? And
they parade them out.
Yes. And the incentives are so strong, like so much of that person's identity and income and success, and I was built on that position. It's, I would say, nearly impossible for someone like that to ever change their mind. Like if one day Candace Owens all of a sudden said, you know what, I was wrong about this, and black people need to stand up and white people need, to.
She started as that before she
did, and it didn't work.
She did. It didn't work. There wasn't enough money. I mean,
yes.
Look, like there's a lot of money in conservative politics. If you're a articulate, intelligent black person who's conservative, you're like they're gonna target you because why? Because there's not a lot of y'all.
There's not a lot. Yeah,
and they desperately need you on their side so they can parade your ass out.
Yeah, put the camera on
and
you.
So they can hide and say, "See, I got a black friend. I got a black cousin. My cousin married a black one." They get to do that.
That's right.
That's insidious as fuck.
That's right. And so that's what
they do it with women. They do it with gays for Trump. They do all that shit.
Yeah.
Whatever that group is.
Yeah. And when you see someone like that, like here's someone representing a people group, and they are on camera, usually right on a big show, lots of ratings, and they are arguing for something that disadvantages them and people like them. It's like, please tell me your eyes are open. You can see this. You understand, like this person is not speaking in the best interest of themselves or their own or of that people group. Like something else is going on. They are being manipulated. They are being paid to say what they're saying because it props up and legitimizes, this oppression, whether, like you said, whether it's religious oppression or, it's white Christian nationalism or white supremacy, white privilege,
whatever it
or
is.
if it's the patriarchy, right? And it's always been there. Like, again, I'm an old man, but I can remember Anita Bryant, right? She was a famous actress and this beautiful pinup girl and all this stuff. And then she was going around like against women's rights. Like, and there were lots of women doing this. Like, arguing that women should not have equal rights. That because it goes against God's plan. That's why I asked this question in the episode this week. Like, there's all these Christians who would say when they hear these arguments against the patriarchy, they're like, but the Bible says, the Bible supports patriarchy, so it's God's plan. And the part of it is like, yes, the Bible does seem to support that in many ways. Now, again, you can argue both sides. Again, that's the problem with the Bible. Yeah. And you can use it.
Yeah, that is the problem. It's like, I understand where folks like Sheila are coming from, and April. I think they're still Christians, right? They're still both Christians, right?
I don't know.
I mean, we didn't get into it, but I mean, assuming they are, if I'm wrong,
I'm sure Sheila is. I would say Sheila is, but I don't know about April.
For sure. Regardless, like I think of folks like Marg Moscow too, who, like she's a feminist theologian, scholar, and holds true to like the Bible being her guidepost, right? I don't personally, but fine.
Right.
And she makes the arguments, and fairly decently, that these passages in the Bible aren't as patriarchal as on the surface they seem. To a degree, that's true, but there are still problematic issues.
There's still plenty of problematic.
So, like, I'd say, like, I'm of the view that we hold accountable the past, but not to the modern standards necessarily. Right. So I would read Paul and I'd say these two things could be true at the same time. He is problematic. And I think he has some problematic views on sexuality and women and marriage and companionship and whatever. I would also say, on the other hand, we're misreading a lot of Paul. We're attributing things to him that might not be his actual words.
Right.
And so he's not as problematic as like the Calvinists champion him as. Like they champion Paul out as like this perfect patriarchal misogynist. I'm like, he's not that.
No.
On the other hand, he's not the logos of God.
Right. And he's also as progressive as he is in certain areas, like you said, he's still in his product in his context. He's still the product of his time. And there are still some things he's, I would say he gets it wrong,
Sure.
I mean, because again, going to like, for example, the 1 Corinthians passage, right? So these two words, right? One of them is arsenokotai. That's the one that mainly gets translated as homosexuality, and it shouldn't be, right? And so that one's an easy one to break down and say, okay, that in that case, arsenokotai, it's a translation problem. It's people wanting to force that word into the definition of homosexuality when it's not there. And that's the problem with arsenokotai.
It can't be there.
But
like,
Malakoi,
it's not a sociological category at the time.
That's
like it literally cannot mean what we mean as a sociological category.
Right. But Malakoi is not. Malakoi, if Paul means what he says in 1 Corinthians, and what he's arguing is that an effeminate man cannot enter the kingdom, he's just wrong. Right. So I'm just going to say, like, Malakoi is harder because Malakoi is Paul showing us his cultural bias.
But who is the Malakoi in that system, right? Like,
it's a man that is shaves his beard or likes poetry or is effeminate or maybe has longer hair. Maybe he's effeminate. Maybe he's gay, right? Maybe he appears to be feminine. And Paul would be saying that person can't enter the kingdom. Like, dude, that's bullshit. Come on.
Right. Yeah, I would just simply turn Paul's words in on him if he literally meant that. I would say, how can you say that when there is no longer Jew? Are you not dividing in the same way the church of Galatia was dividing?
Yeah.
And are you not falling for your therefore in Romans 2:1, Paul?
Yes, exactly.
And so I would that's where I think I always lean toward the fact that if Paul is really, really smart, he knows those rhetorical arguments because he uses rhetoric all the time.
Right. And
so he knows that that rhetoric, just from a logic standpoint, if he knows how to use rhetoric, he knows we're going to use rhetoric against him to fuck him up with his own words.
Yeah, I've always wondered about 1 Corinthians, and I'll just confess, I have not
You
pressed
got to read
into it.
Lucy. You got to read Lucy Pepiot's book.
Okay.
Women in Worship in Corinth.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe she does this in her book, because I've had a suspicion, but like I said, I haven't chased it down very hard. And maybe, like I said, maybe this book, you can tell me, maybe this book does this. But sometimes I've been reading 1 Corinthians. There is a bit of prosopopoeia in that, although it's not really purely prosopopoeia as much as he's responding to their letter to him. So I think in some cases there's a potential that when he's writing something, he's really just quoting back to them the question they asked or the statement they gave him, and then after that he's responding to it. But we don't know that, so we're reading it all straight. So I've wondered if sometimes I've also wondered if, for example, like the place I've noticed it the most in 1 Corinthians is the place where he starts arguing that they should expel the immoral brother and have nothing to do with him and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, does he really mean that? Or is he saying that almost facetiously in a way to later on make another point, like, but is this really the right way to do it? Like, maybe this isn't the right way to respond, but without saying it so directly. I don't know. And like I said, I haven't pressed into it that much. But eventually we will. I guess we're going to write a book on 1 Corinthians at some point.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've done a deep dive on which passages, how it works out in Corinthians. My focus on Paul in that way has never been, but again, we kind of, we focus on the things that affect us most. Like Lucy Pepiot would focus on that because there's a lot of passage about women in 1 Corinthians, and in Romans, there's stuff about LGBT folks. So I've been fascinated by Romans, and I think Romans, the prosopopoeia is super heavy.
Yes,
I think it's lighter in 1 Corinthians, and like you said, like we don't know, and we'll probably never know what the actual first letter to the Corinthians is
exactly,
and what their response was.
Right. Yeah.
Because 1 Corinthians is the third letter in the correspondences.
That's exactly right. See, that's exactly right. And you're right. We'll never get that because there was one copy of those letters and no one ever copied those. So, the chances of finding that are zero.
We're not going to find it on a hard drive or a zip drive lane out somewhere.
But again, going to your thing about logical consistency, this is kind of why I had that suspicion or question in 1 Corinthians, because 1 Corinthians is the same letter where Paul has an entire chapter devoted to love, and he talks about how love, among other things, keeps no record of wrongs. And in that same letter, he's pressing in really hard on that church to keep a record of wrongs against someone and kicking them out. And I'm like, well, Paul, what are you doing? Or are you trying to get them to see how these are inconsistencies, that you can't do this, you can't say you all care about love and still do this other thing, and you're going to have to choose.
Right. To me, and there is prosopopoeia in 1 Corinthians, and forgive me, I don't remember where, like I said, but it's the same thing as Jacob I have loved and Esau I have hated, but I'm going to have mercy on everyone because everyone has been held over to disobedience. How do you reconcile 9 and 11 in Romans?
Yes.
Well, because he's baiting you so he can hit you with the punchline.
That's exactly right.
So he's doing that a lot, and we need to give him I think we need to give him a little more credit that if he's as good a rhetorician as we think he is, if he's on par with like Colbert, the Colbert Report,
right,
then Paul might be doing some stuff that we're not privy to, but scholars like Doug Campbell and Lucy Pepiot and Chris Tilling have picked up on J. Louis Martin, and we need to pay more attention to them, because then if Paul isn't wishy-washy and he is consistent, then they're on to something, and Paul is doing some shit that we need to pay attention to.
And then we need
Calvinists.
That's right. And then then hopefully you and I can write a book that highlights that and points that out and says we need to consider this, that Paul is not being always so direct. Sometimes he's wanting you to connect the dots in your brain, like, oh, wait a minute, he just made this point, now he's making this other point, and I'm going to have to think about this. How do I get from here to there?
This is the problem with modern Christianity. I know we're at over half an hour now, but the letter is not written to you. The Bible is not written to you.
Right.
They do not have you in mind. They cannot foresee any of us. In fact, Paul may have at one point in his earliest letters, Thessalonians, thought that the world was literally going to end.
Right. And then
he
later,
may have actually thought that and been like, well, it didn't. So how do I readjust my theology?
Exactly.
Do we ever give Paul or anyone in the Bible room to actually repent of their theology,
change
and
their
then
mind?
to write a later letter that might contradict their first letter? As a writer, you and I, can we look back on our first books and say,
yeah, there's stuff in there I don't agree with anymore.
I don't think I agree with that. And if I did a second edition, I might have to redact that.
No, exactly. And I have done that. I actually did that with one of my books.
Hey, you did?
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, technically 2 of my books. So I had self-published a book called...
I think I know one.
Yeah, you know the other one. So I had self-published a book before I published with Choir. I wrote a book called This Is My Body, Ecclesia as God Intended. It was all about the house church kind of stuff, our experiences in the house church, which later I revised, and added a ton of new material to it and republished it under the title Jesus Unveiled. But in the self-published, the original version that I did, This Is My Body, I had a whole section in there about how women couldn't be elders, that elders were only men.
Canceled.
Yeah. And then I changed my mind, like, wait a second, no, that was wrong. And so when I couldn't wait, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do an updated version of the book and put it in the Jesus Son series.
So that you could
I could change it. Yeah. So I could change that. That's why I never promote that book ever. Like, please, if you're listening to this, do not go buy This Is My Body. Don't buy that book.
But here's the testimony, and here's the irony of it, is that Christianity will insist, and they'll say, universalists diminish repentance. And I'm like, literally, you did in print.
Yes.
You said something, you repented of it, you changed your thinking. Yeah. You were excited to republish a book that showed your repentance.
Yeah.
And they'll say we diminish repentance.
No, not at all. I mean, there's smaller things that I would change in older books, but they're the kind of things that I haven't changed that book, right? So there's things that say Jesus Untangled, Jesus Unbound. I'm still kind of talking a bit like you need to, repent and turn to Christ so that, blah, blah, blah. Whereas later on, in later books in the Jesus Son series, it's more like Christ is in everybody, right? So
I think that's a beautiful way of actually going about being a human.
Yeah.
I mean, you're being vulnerable, you're being open, and you're not building your platform on what you believe right now.
Right.
And that's too many of Christianity. Is like, how many Christian content creators, and I know we're getting off topic, but this is the Friday bonus show, like I said.
Yeah, come on.
How many of them have built their platforms on what they currently believe, what they're against, and so if they ever change, then what?
Right.
What happens to their following? What happens to their monetization? What happens to everything?
That's right.
They're almost held to a place where they cannot literally repent of something, change their way of thinking about something, lest they lose all their following, lest they lose the people that are there for them to tell them what they already believe.
Yeah, a person's ability to see something is directly connected to how much their livelihood depends on them not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if your livelihood depends on not noticing some of these things, you're just not going to notice it. And if you do, you're going to quickly say, nope, can't go there.
It's like that scene from Dumb and Dumber, la 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 la, la, fingers in the ear.
That's exactly right. That's right.
And cannot hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in Sola Deus, for example, I flat out say that on that issue of Christ being in everybody, I talk about my process, and I talk about how I went from believing, as Christ was only in Christians to Christ was in everybody. And I tell the story about how it was primarily Jamal Javanji on the Heretic Happy Hour. Almost every episode, he and I we would argue about this. And I said, number one, I'm grateful to Jamal that he didn't let me off the hook on this. And I was wrong. I say that in the book. I say I was wrong. And I'm happy to say I was wrong because I was. and I have no problem with that. So yeah.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah. We should change our minds more often.
We should change our minds more often. Not be flippant, but just
but be willing.
Always be willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, that should be our posture.
Yeah.
So, men, you might be wrong on the patriarchy.
You're wrong.
And I'll mention one thing before we do our sign off here. They brought up I forget if it was Sheila or April, the umbrella, the Christ umbrella.
Yeah, the God.
We've all
Father.
seen it.
Yeah.
I put it in my new book that's coming out in October, Heretic 2. The first thing I ever think when I saw that from the beginning, before I even read what it says, I'm like, why is Christ's umbrella leaking? If Christ has the umbrella over it, why?
Yeah.
You ain't never gonna have a whole ass umbrella over your head, and then a little umbrella for the hole that's in the umbrella under that one. What the? Who the fuck? Have you ever held an umbrella?
Yes. Do you need another one under that one? Yeah, exactly.
You need one fucking umbrella, the big one over your head.
You know what? I'm gonna remake the graphic where it just says like at the top, God umbrella, and then everybody else underneath, but no one else has an umbrella, and they're all standing side by side.
More than one. Who is ever like? I need 4 umbrellas in this.
Yeah.
What are you? Do you know what an umbrella is?
Do you understand how this technology works? Yeah.
It's not that advanced. We've had umbrellas for years.
Yeah, a long time.
Okay. Welcome to the fucking show.
Yeah.
Anyway, shout out to Sheila. Shout out to April. Do we have a preview? What do we have next on tap? What's next Tuesday?
What is next Tuesday? Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me pull out my.
Putting you on the spot. In the meantime, if you want to call into this show, 530-332-8020. Call into the show if we didn't get to something, if we messed something up. I once said Isaiah 60 when I meant Isaiah 61. If you want to tell me about it, you can call the show. If you have a question, call the show. Just reference what you're talking about so we know what episode it comes from.
Okay.
Hit us up and we'll be happy to talk about it on Friday. What do we got next for Tuesday?
Okay, the next Tuesday's episode is The False White Gospel. It's our guest will be Jim Wallace from Sojourners, Herb Montgomery, author of Finding Jesus, and Dylan Neighbor Cruz, author of Theological Musings, and my fellow God Squad co-host. That's going to be a great episode.
Oh my God.
Yep.
White folks going to want to pay attention to this one.
Yes, please.
We're going to have some hard truths of the Bible for you.
Hey,
and if you, this is also a crowdfunded show. So if you want to support us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/choircast. I'll link in the show notes. Keith, you got any last words before we go?
No, I guess I'll just say, kind of getting us ready for next week's episode. Spoiler alert. The Bible was not written by white people, and it wasn't really written about white people or to white people. So keep that in mind. Anyway, no, that's it.
All right. On that, subscribe, put a review up wherever you're listening to. Tell one of your white friends to listen next week.
If each one of you would just reach one, we could change the world for Heretic Happy Hour.
Okay, do it.
Tell someone about the gospel of the Heretic Happy Hour.
Do it. The gospel of heresy.
Yes.
Bring it on. Bring it on home, Eric.
Call the hotline, 530-332-8020.
Do it. Do it.
Do it now. Get to the chopper.